The New York night skyline, viewed from the top floor of a Manhattan high-rise, sparkled like scattered jewels against the deep velvet sky. Norma Williams stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, her reflection layered over the city lights. Her long, graceful figure seemed as composed as her carefully planned life. But tonight, her thoughts weren't on architecture or deadlines. Instead, she wondered whether everything was truly ready for tomorrow's Christmas gathering. Her profession had trained her to anticipate every detail, every contingency. Yet family, her mother Barbara and her sister Carol, had always been a different kind of blueprint. No matter how carefully she tried to build a bond, the foundation was always unstable, riddled with cracks she couldn't repair. "Norma, I've hidden Emily's present in the closet." David's warm voice drifted from the living room. She turned from the window, her lips curving into a faint smile. David, her husband, was her anchor, an executive at a Silicon Valley tech company, who, despite his demanding career, always made space for her ambitions. He had respected her work as an architect from the very beginning, and their marriage thrived because they celebrated each other's successes, never competing but growing side by side. "Thank you," she replied, stepping into the golden glow of the living room. "Is Emily asleep?" David nodded, glancing up from the tablet balanced on his knee. "Yes, she could hardly close her eyes, though. She's more excited than anyone for tomorrow morning." His expression softened. "Did you tell her Carol and the others are coming?" Norma hesitated, reaching for the wine glass on the coffee table before answering. "Yes, Emily is looking forward to seeing Jason." What she didn't admit aloud was that Emily wasn't eager about Aunt Carol's visit. At 14, Emily was perceptive enough to sense the hidden chill behind her aunt's practiced smile. Carol lived in Connecticut with her husband Michael, a businessman who thrived on appearances, and their 12-year-old son Jason. To outsiders, their lives were a portrait of success: perfect house, perfect child, perfect vacations. Carol's cheerfulness in public settings could easily convince anyone she was the picture of warmth. But Norma knew better. She had seen flashes of something darker: envy, resentment, and a quiet cruelty that others overlooked. 3 years ago, when Carol and Michael's investment collapsed and foreclosure threatened their home, Norma had stepped in without hesitation. She had paid off their mortgage and even continued covering Jason's private school tuition. Carol had smiled and said all the right words of gratitude, but Norma had never forgotten the flicker of bitterness in her sister's eyes, as though the help had cost her dignity instead of easing her burden. David broke the silence. "Your mother left a message. She'll be here at 10 tomorrow." Norma's smile faltered slightly, but she forced composure into her voice. "Her room is ready." Barbara Williams, elegant and sharp-tongued, carried herself like a woman who never forgave weakness. She often praised Carol's shrewdness, calling it survival instinct, while dismissing Norma's generosity as naive softness. "Mother still favors Carol, doesn't she?" Norma asked quietly, sinking into the sofa with her glass of wine. David slipped an arm around her shoulders, offering quiet reassurance. "Let her. You've always done what's right. That's nothing to be ashamed of." "I know," Norma whispered, but her voice carried an edge of unease. "It's just, Carol's been different lately. Last week when we went shopping, she kept asking these strangely detailed questions, about our apartment, about my projects. It felt less like conversation and more like she was collecting information." David frowned. "Maybe you're overthinking it, but if it bothers you, stay cautious." Norma nodded but didn't respond. She feared that by speaking her anxieties aloud, she would give them power. Still, the warning signs haunted her. Carol's unnatural interest in Emily, the subtle glances Carol and Barbara exchanged when they thought she wasn't looking, the faint chill in the room whenever family gathered. Something was building beneath the surface, though she couldn't yet name it. The clock chimed 11. Outside, snow began falling softly, veiling Manhattan's glittering skyline in white silence. Tomorrow was Christmas. It should have been a day of warmth, joy, and family unity. Norma exhaled deeply, whispering to herself, "Tomorrow will be wonderful," but the unease in her chest tightened instead of easing. Christmas Eve morning arrived with the hush of snow blanketing the city. Emily was the first to rise, bounding into the living room in her slippers. At 14, she was bright and graceful, with the same thoughtful eyes as her mother. She eagerly adjusted ornaments on the towering Christmas tree, her artistic sensibility evident in every detail she touched. "When is Aunt Carol coming?" Emily asked, crouching to rearrange presents. "Around noon," Norma answered, pausing in the kitchen doorway with a fond smile. "I'm glad we managed to get that gaming system Jason wanted." Emily's face dimmed briefly. "That was really expensive, wasn't it?" "That doesn't matter," Norma said gently. "Family takes care of each other." Emily nodded, but her silence lingered. She loved her mother's generosity but doubted Aunt Carol appreciated it. By noon, the doorbell chimed. Carol swept in with polished cheer, Michael trailing with Jason, and Barbara following with her usual air of superiority. They exchanged greetings, posed for photos by the tree, and filled the apartment with polite laughter. Yet beneath the surface, Norma saw what others ignored. Carol's smile didn't touch her eyes. Barbara's remark about the penthouse, quite extravagant, isn't it, was laced with venom, and most unsettling of all, Carol's gaze lingered on Emily just a beat too long. That night at dinner, Barbara leaned close to Carol and whispered something. Both women exchanged smiles that were too sharp, too knowing. David caught it, too, later whispering to Norma, "Something feels off." Norma squeezed his hand beneath the table. "I feel it too. But tomorrow is Christmas. Let's not ruin it." Christmas morning arrived in a hush of falling snow. Norma brewed coffee while Emily rushed in with shining eyes, her excitement lighting the room. Soon David joined them, warm with holiday cheer, though his eyes hinted at the same concern Norma felt. At precisely 9, the doorbell rang again. Barbara entered first, regal and smiling, followed by Carol's family. "Merry Christmas," Carol said, embracing Norma. Her tone was sweet, but her eyes glimmered with something colder. Barbara stooped to Emily's level, her voice unnaturally bright. "Emily, Grandma's gift for you is special. You'll love it." Norma froze for the briefest moment. She caught the flicker of a look between Barbara and Carol, a look heavy with anticipation. The family settled in the living room. Gifts were exchanged, laughter filled the air, and tissue paper piled up on the carpet. Jason's eyes lit up as he unwrapped the latest iPhone from Norma and David. Michael stammered gratitude, while Carol's thanks were polite but hollow, her gaze already sliding to Emily. Finally, it was Emily's turn. "Mom, look how pretty this one is," Emily said, holding up a small, elegantly wrapped box. Norma smiled, though unease prickled her skin. "It is beautiful. Go ahead, sweetheart." "Wait," Carol interjected smoothly. She handed Emily another box, slightly larger, wrapped in shimmering gold paper. "This one is from me and Grandma." Barbara's voice chimed in, unusually light. "Yes, dear, open ours first. It's very special." Emily's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she reached for the gold box. "Where did you buy that wrapping?" David asked suddenly, his tone sharp. Carol blinked innocently. "At the department store, of course. Why?" "No reason," David said, though his eyes didn't leave the box. Norma's heartbeat quickened. Her instincts screamed at her, but she forced a smile. "Emily, go ahead." The room grew unnaturally quiet as Emily untied the ribbon. Carol leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. Barbara held her breath, her lips curling with barely concealed anticipation. The air felt heavy, as if the entire apartment was holding its breath. "The wrapping is so pretty," Emily said softly, fingertips brushing the gold paper, "almost too pretty to open." She began to peel it back, unaware that the moment she did, everything would change. The wrapping paper crinkled in Emily's hands as she carefully peeled it away, as if instinctively afraid to tear it. Beneath the folds of soft pastel wrapping was a container, no larger than a small jewelry box, tied neatly with a satin ribbon. The box seemed ordinary, yet something about the way Carol presented it made Norma's stomach twist. "Oh, lovely," Emily smiled warmly, picking it up. "What is this?" "Open it and see," Carol replied, her lips lifting ever so slightly. Her voice carried an edge, subtle but sharp, as though she knew more than she let on. "We chose it especially for you." Barbara leaned forward, watching with eyes that glimmered not with affection but with an eerie anticipation. She almost held her breath, her hands clasped tightly together in her lap. Norma shifted uneasily on the sofa and exchanged a quick glance with David. He too seemed to notice it, that undercurrent of wrongness threading through the room. Emily tugged gently at the ribbon and lifted the lid of the small box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a delicate silver bracelet. Several tiny charms dangled from it, each one polished to perfection, catching the light and scattering it in small, beautiful reflections across the room. "Oh, it's beautiful," Emily gasped. Her face lit up as she looked toward Carol and Barbara. "Thank you, Aunt Carol, Grandma." She carefully picked it up, her fingers tracing the cool metal, and then lifted the bracelet to her wrist. But the moment the clasp touched her skin, something changed. Emily froze, her smile faltered, her eyes widened unnaturally, pupils dilating like ink spreading in water. The bracelet slipped halfway onto her wrist as her hands began to tremble violently. "Emily?" Norma's voice rose, trembling. She leaned forward, reaching instinctively toward her daughter. There was no answer. The color drained from Emily's face so quickly it was as though someone had pulled the life from her body. Her lips paled to an unsettling blue. Then, without warning, her entire body began to shake violently. "Emily!" Norma screamed, launching herself to her daughter's side. Emily's body convulsed uncontrollably. She collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud, her arms jerking and her legs rigid. Foam began to gather at the corner of her mouth, her breaths shallow and erratic. "Ambulance!" David's voice thundered as he fumbled with his phone, his own hands trembling. "My daughter is having a seizure. Please, please come quickly." Norma cradled Emily's head with desperate care, her tears falling fast and blinding. She tried to shield her daughter's body from the hard floor, her sobs choking her voice. "Emily, hang on. Please hang on." Then, cutting through the chaos, came a voice that made Norma's heart stop. Was the stimulus too strong? Barbara's voice, smooth, almost amused, and disturbingly calm. Norma looked up sharply. Her mother's hand covered her mouth, but her eyes gleamed with a cold, cruel satisfaction. Beside her, Carol murmured, "The perfect surprise, isn't it?" The words sliced through Norma like shards of ice. She stared in horror at her sister. Carol's expression wasn't twisted by fear or guilt, it was composed, almost triumphant. "What are you saying?" Norma cried, her voice breaking. She's. But she couldn't finish. Emily's body convulsed harder, her skin turning a frightening shade of gray. "Hurry!" David shouted into the phone. "She's unconscious now, her convulsions are worsening. Please, we need help." At last, Michael seemed to shake himself from shock. He jumped to his feet. "Is there anything I can do? Tell me what to do." His face was pale, but his eyes were wide with genuine alarm. Jason, however, remained frozen on the sofa, his mouth open, paralyzed with terror. "Water," Norma stammered through her sobs. "Cushions, anything to keep her safe." Michael darted into the kitchen, but Norma's gaze flicked briefly toward Barbara and Carol. They hadn't moved. They stood apart, whispering in hushed tones, their cold eyes fixed on the scene with an unnerving stillness. David pressed a trembling hand to Norma's shoulder. His voice quivered, but he tried to sound steady. "The ambulance will be here soon. It'll be okay, Norma. It'll be fine." But the terror in his eyes betrayed him. Emily's convulsions showed no sign of stopping. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath a shallow, desperate gasp. Norma's eyes landed on the bracelet again. It lay against Emily's trembling hand, looking so deceptively ordinary. Why had she collapsed the moment she touched it? "Let me see that bracelet," David said suddenly, urgency in his tone. He carefully pried it from Emily's stiff fingers, turning it over. His face darkened as he examined the back. "This isn't." But before he could finish, the sharp chime of the doorbell rang. The paramedics burst in, voices brisk and efficient. They dropped their bags by Emily's side, assessing her condition with practiced precision. "She's seizing," one said quickly. "Let's move." They lifted her onto a stretcher as Norma clung to her daughter's hand, refusing to let go. "Please, please save her," she cried. Her sobs shook her whole body. "Ma'am, come with us," one paramedic urged. "Her condition is unstable. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." "I'm coming," Norma said, her voice trembling as she climbed into the ambulance beside Emily. David turned briefly to Michael. "The keys are on the table. Please lock up later." Michael nodded quickly. "Don't worry. Go, just go." As Norma stepped into the ambulance, her eyes flicked back toward the house. Barbara and Carol stood by the living room window, their silhouettes framed by the soft light inside. Their faces carried no trace of worry, only the quiet, chilling satisfaction of two people who had just set a trap and watched it spring shut. The ambulance doors closed with a metallic slam. The sirens wailed, cutting through the night, as they sped toward the hospital. Norma clutched Emily's cold, trembling hand against her chest. Her heart screamed with fear, but her mind, even in its chaos, whispered one haunting question. Was this truly a random seizure, or something far more sinister, carefully planned? She couldn't bear to think it through. Not yet. All she could do was pray that her daughter would survive the night.